Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Gordon Potter. We're going to give two quick presentations, kind of in tandem. I'm going to do Ember-Cli add-ons, and then Jake here is going to do. Yes. Can you hear me? Up. Sorry. Louder. So we're going to do two basic presentations real quick. They're kind of related. I'm going to just talk about Ember-Cli add-ons in the general sense, and he's going to talk about a more specific case of in-repo add-ons. All the slides will be published, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I got a lot of slides, a lot of content. I'm just going to kind of rip through this. Don't worry. You can click the links and look them up or whatever. So what are add-ons? Add-ons are a general-purpose way to package and share your code with the Ember ecosystem. It's one of the differentiators, actually, between Angular and Ember. Some of the positive things people say about Ember is that the ecosystem is really great. There's all these tools, these functionality I can install without having to build it myself. That's really empowered by add-ons. And the Ember-Cli folks have put a lot of thought into trying to make that as seamless and as useful to the end user as possible. So who uses add-ons? If you use Ember-Cli, you do as of today. You have been, you might just not know it. Ember-Cli itself is a collection of various NPM modules and some add-ons. So if things kind of bubble up, become really great functionality, bake it in, becomes an add-on. It's just part of a dependency in Ember-Cli. The use case for add-ons. There are various use cases. It's all over the map. Basically, I think of it as if you can imagine it, then it can be crafted into an add-on. There is no single use case. You can almost do anything. So there are many cases. But I'm going to go through a several common, or just give an outline of what's possible. So Ember-Cli hooks and asset compilation. So for example, SAS compilation. You can there's an add-on called Ember-Cli SAS. So let's just take SAS files, convert it, process it, and good to go. Ember-Cli is it's a build tool. It's a tool that can observe your file system and watch for changes and merge all that code together and generate output. So I think that's it is the fundamental tool in Ember-Cli that runs things. That's a joke. Okay. Packaging and sharing components in UI. So if you have a little widget you want to share, you can do that. So for example, there's something called Ember-Cli async button. And the idea here is just a little button that if you have some asynchronous operation, fetching some data or something, it'll run a little spinner or disable itself while it's waiting for it, so you prevent that double-click problem where you click and click again to fetches. Build process hooks. So as you're running your project and doing development, you want to see something happen. You want some notification or error. So there's something called Ember-Cli notifications that will, every time an error comes up, give you like a little growl notice or some pop-up that tells you, hey, this happened. So you don't have to watch your terminal necessarily.
Why are you linking to Ember Observer instead of GitHub?
I will get to that. So mix-ins. There's a mix-in, for example, in Ember undo stack, which just basically lets you create a little array and push things onto the stack and pop them off and go back and forth if you have various operations that you want to do. Pretty clever. External libraries. Say you have some JS library that you want to use, for example, like Moment or Ember-Cli accounting. You can just wrap it in an add-on. All your consumer has to do is say, Ember install this add-on, and now they got the thing and it's ready to go. Testing and development tools. For example, Ember-Cli Mirage is a little bit of a pretty advanced tool that lets you stub and mock and do all kinds of fancy things with your test setup and makes it easier to manage testing. So there's an example of an add-on. Version dependency. Ember-Cli, I believe, uses this. Ember-Cli version checker. So you can declare when something, if it meets a certain criteria or certain SymVer current requirement. Transpiling. This is in current Ember-Cli. Everything goes from ES6 down to ES5 or older code. So Ember-Cli Babel is a project that does that work for you. So it's an add-on, and that's good too. Code cleanup. There's a cool little tool out there called Ember Watson that basically will. There was a change with the way tests were done, for example, and QUnit changed. So this thing can go through your whole project and change hundreds or thousands of files, and it does it in a smart and consistent way and just change a bunch of code in your project and make sure it conforms to some newer paradigm or standard. So it's pretty cool. Check it out. So how do you create an add-on? It's just like anything else in Ember-Cli. There's a generator for it. Ember add-on, my add-on project. So it's just simple little line of code. So what does this generator do? It creates a blank project. Probably can't read this very well, but basically there's an example. It looks very much like a normal Ember-Cli project, except that it's got a little add-on folder and a bunch of other defined files. And I'll get into the details one by one. So there's a few important ones to focus on here. Add-on. This is a folder that sits at the top of your file there, and it is basically where you put your code, your add-on code, your implementation code. You can it starts out blank. You can put it can look very much like an app folder with routes and templates and components and so on and so forth. So it's the structure of it is up to you, but you can follow basic conventions and they'll just work. The app folder. This is the kind of clever thing about add-ons. Anything created here you can think of as getting merged via Ember-Cli into your Ember-Cli project space. So if something exists there, it's as if it exists in your actual project. So if you create a template file in here, it'll be over there. If a component is created, it'll be available to the rest of your app. So my foobar component or my component. When creating files within this folder, it's always a good idea to simply import and re-export the modules from the add-on folder. So you have your implementation, and then app folder is just this place where things pass through, and I'll give a quick example of that. This provides users of your add-on the ability to override behaviors of your add-on before they're used elsewhere in your app. So you get kind of last stop before it gets used. So for example, I have an add-on. Let's say I have an add-on that's just a component, and so I have my add-on / components my button.js, and then it just looks like a normal component you might normally build with Ember, and then whatever implementation details that your button does. Inside your app folder would be app / component / my button, and here you're just importing and then re-exporting out, and it's this. Presumably the user can do some things here or change something in line before it's used in their project. Yes?
Do you mind if I just say something? So this is actually how your add-ons, when you generate a component inside of an add-on, this is the default way that it does it. It just changed recently. The reason being is so you can extend your, you basically import just like this, my add-on project component to my button, and that lets you extend that in your project. So you can override the layout, for instance. So that's why the layout is basically imported from inside the add-on folder.
Yeah, there's a namespace.
Instead of just having the file show up separately, being hidden away this way to give the user access to the developer access to it.
So, well, it gives you a way to basically. So if the reasoning is,
What was the
if it's in your app folder, your project's app folder is always going to name. So if you had a component that was of the same name in your add-on folder that was in your project's app folder,
You would redeclare it. So what he's saying, you'd redeclare it in your app folder like this and do something like this, but then do your specific implementation in your project. But the add-on is just stubbed to kind of have, okay, there's a reference to the real implementation, or the default behavior, and it just, when Ember-Cli merges them together, it's as if you had created that button file.
your project will always win over an add-on.
It has priority.
It has priority.
Oh, okay. There's another folder called test/dummy. Now, this is an interesting convention. It's been around for a while. It's just a folder where you can put concrete implementation to test or write acceptance tests. So you can put anything you want in here. I like to think of it, you can put additional templates, components, models, things that aren't necessarily strictly part of your add-on, but are things that you might actually have real code that would use the add-on and demonstrate features of the add-on. And then the test will run that dummy app, process it, and you can test against that. I also think this is an interesting and great way to just document how your add-on works, especially if you've got some tricky or peculiar use case. Someone can just poke at the dummy app and go, oh, I see, they do this, this, and this, and that gives me something. When you launch the add-on, run Ember serve, it will launch the dummy app, and that is your app that you're serving up. It's just like your project. There's an index.js. This is just a convention. It's the entry point for your add-on. It's kind of following NPM. You can place in this initialization configuration. You set up variables, other functions, things that you need to use in the add-on. It's just all kind of how you bootstrap or set up your add-on.
Also where your add-on hooks go.
Yeah, in various hooks, exactly. So, and then there's a package JSON, very similar to Ember-Cli package. It's just various dependencies you can declare, and some project metadata and some information, versioning, stuff like that. Okay, so the API for add-ons, there's numerous hooks, and a lot of this is just sort of cribbed from this document. You should just go check out the Ember-Cli repo and check out the add-on hooks markdown document. It's got a pretty long, detailed document. It's pretty good. And some actual code examples. I don't have a lot of code examples. I'm just going to kind of go through these quickly just so you get a sense of them, and then there's more details with this document. So config, this is just a function that allows you to set up your configuration in your environment. It gets merged in with your app, your Ember-Cli's config. Blueprints path. So if you have a blueprint that generates something, you can tell, and maybe it's in a non-conventional place or whatever you want to do, you can tell, make your add-on, make everything aware of where paths are, where the blueprint actually resides in the file system. So you declare all that. Included command. So say your add-on does something, when it's installed, it extends or enables Ember-Cli to do something else, like run a specialized git command or copy or move or do whatever, some interesting command that's not baked into Ember-Cli. You can build your own commands inside Node and run inside Ember-Cli. Server middleware, this is just an opportunity to intercept and handle requests while you're in development mode. You can manipulate fiddle with the proxy behaviors, all kinds of things you might do between you and your server. Post build, so anything after the build and Ember-Cli has done all its work, this lets you do some stuff afterwards. So you can basically, you have access to everything, to the tree, which is just another word for folder, with, all the structure of your whole project, and you can do some stuff to it after the fact. And Jake will give some more concrete examples of this and stuff. Pre-build, basically, before the process starts. Those are kind of backwards. I should have probably done pre, before, post. Build error. Anytime an error happens in Ember-Cli, this function or hook will get called, and so you can do something specific in there and log something else or do whatever you want. It just happens when an error happens. Included. Basically, this is a way to kind of declare and register and import various assets that are needed by your project. You can say, go grab Twitter Bootstrap here and this there, or whatever kinds of other things or assets that or images or whatever that your app needs. You can manage that with this included hook.
When your app is like the app using your add-on?
Yeah, like if you have, you just know there's some path to some image resource in your add-on. You want to make sure it's available to the rest of the app. You can kind of make sure it happens. Set up preprocessor registry. This is kind of one of the things that makes Ember-Cli pretty powerful. You can do almost anything you want. If you don't like JavaScript or ECMAScript, you can be a CoffeeScript user. We won't hate you nonetheless. If you like, you don't have to have that SAS versus less debate. You can use either one, even both if you're really crazy. HTML bars, so that's the new kind of templating language. Supersedes handlebars and various others. Anything you have some. There's a lot of them out there. There's like Emblem. There's various interesting little tools, preprocessors. I think at EmberConf, someone even took C++ code, compiled it, ran it in the browser, and boom, you're live. So there's, sky's the limit there. Post-process tree, basically run processes after building the whole project. So this is kind of the final stop. You can fingerprint the various files that are generated on your behalf or prepare them for deployment or whatever you want to do. Lint tree, this is basically put some linting and output inside your test unit and some other stuff makes use of this. So you get some reporting back of what's happening, some JS hint to error or whatever is happening in your project. Content for, this is a hook for basically inserting string content inside your index.html file of your Ember-Cli project. So for example, you can inject Google Analytics tracking code and make sure it's always in the output and maybe programmatically do something clever with it. Jake, I think, will have a more concrete example demo. Tree for, this is a generic way of working with trees or directory structures, Ember-Cli process generically. There's also a bunch of general, tree4 is very general purpose, but there's also more specific APIs for working with specific parts of your app. So the app folder, the styles folder, the templates folder, the add-on folder, vendor folder, so on and so forth. Is developing add-on. This is just a little place where you put a hook that says is developing true, and it behaves as if you're working on an Ember-Cli project. So every time you make a change, it'll library load and behave like you're working on it, like you normally develop an Ember-Cli project. Some pitfalls. I want to give a shout out to Jake. He really kind of came through and gave me a bunch of things that you want to think about when you're trying to develop your add-ons. And just these are sort of words of wisdom from the Battle Wounded. Don't use pods for now. It's just not. There's some things about it just not quite working. It'll eventually get supported. It's just not there yet. There's a few. Just for add-ons. Pods are normally confined, but for add-ons, just try to use the conventional structure. Templates don't currently compile. There's some stuff with the pod module prefix and module resolver that can be problematic. So, paths. We live in a multi-platform world, as much as us Mac users would like to not be the case. We do. So if you're doing node code, you want to make sure you use path join and kind of make sure your code works in both worlds. Redmond and Silicon Valley. Redmond and Cupertino should both be happy. I know there's Linux users out there too, but I don't think Linux is used on the internet. Is that? When working with ES6 modules, you can use the normal kind of project style paths that you see, everywhere else. So foo bar, index, import, and that'll just kind of work, or just work. Another point probably didn't make clear here is that add-ons can do both code, like Ember code or ES6 code or node code that's doing stuff kind of while you're working on your project. The add-ons are not constrained to just components and front-end stuff. They are actually augmenting and extending your build tool, however you might want to do it. So node code or whatever you want to do. Normalized entity name. If you have an add-on that contains a blueprint and it has no parameters, you want to make sure you override this hook so that when you're trying to install your blueprint, it doesn't throw an error and Ember-Cli won't complain to you. It's just a little gotcha you might want to make note of. You don't have to do anything with it, just declare it and then have it be there. This is a little gotcha that got me when I was first kind of playing around with add-ons. You get this, you run an add-on, install it, hit the default test, and you create a component or a template or something, you get a WTF kind of error message in the Q unit output. You're like, and so what it is you need to declare a template compiler if you make a template in your project. So that means handlebars or HTML bars has to be declared as a dependency in your package.json. It's a very simple fix. It's just not, there's a pretty useful error message that comes up, but it can be chicken egg. Like you can see the test before you see the error message and not realize you spend an hour screaming at the internet going, why did this work? And realize, oh, if I just restarted the project, if I saw the error, fixed it, and been done. So what does this mean? Just declare it in your dependencies in your package.json. Just declare Ember-Cli, HTML bars, whatever version is current. You can also do handlebars as well, which raises an interesting point. What about older projects that don't support HTML bars? I think there's some problems with trying to run them both at the same time. So maybe you consider making 2 versions of your add-on that support both. But really, HTML bars is the future. It's been supported since a couple versions for now. So try to make your stuff work with HTML bars, and the community will be happy. How to tell if an add-on is outdated? Add-ons have been around for a year or so. There's a lot out there, and I mean hundreds, and it's not all as clear what's, of what, some of them are great quality and some of them are dubious quality. So you asked a question about why the Ember Observer, which I'll get to in a second. There's a couple things I think. Just go look at the GitHub repo and see if there's any recent commits. That'll tell you it hasn't just laid dormant for 9 months and it's, life's moved on. Does it appear to support HTML bars? That's a hint that it's probably up to date and doing something quick. Ember-Cli is moving very quickly. It's moved pretty fast, so just be aware of that. Things can bit rot pretty easily. Before Ember-Cli 2.0 or 0.20, add-ons had a very flat structure. Now you can do nested add-ons. There's some discussion in the release notes. It's just you can kind of have add-on within an add-on within an add-on. Version dependencies. This is pretty important. Basically, you can use this other add-on, Ember-Cli version check, to ensure that the version of Ember-Cli meets a certain threshold, or throw a warning if it doesn't, and to let your user know, hey, you might want to upgrade Ember-Cli before you can use this thing. You can assert various things, like if it's above a certain version or includes a certain version. There's a few different features like that. Add-on quality. So this gets to Josh's question. The important here is that the entire Ember community, and really the rest of the world's view of Ember, kind of hinges on how well we do our add-ons. So when doing your add-ons, try to strive for your best. You can try to do some test coverage, try to follow best practices, and look around and see how other people have done it. Try to share the knowledge and figure it out. There are some efforts. There's ember.addons.com, which is just a general repository of all the add-ons. But at EmberConf, is it Katie Gagler announced that they did a site called ember.observer.com, which is kind of an overlay on Ember add-ons. But what she did is she has like 10 different criteria, kind of some of the things I talked about. Has it been committed lately? Does it have meaningful tests? There's a handful of things she uses to score the add-on quality. So everything's given a number between 1 and 10, 10 being the best. So every add-on, if you go to this website, you can search add-ons, find their examples, and see their score, and see kind of what the add-on's about, how well it ranks, and kind of get a good sort of off-the-cuff sense of this thing is good or it's junk or it hasn't been touched for a long time. What is missing in the add-on space? This is sort of a trick question. Your imagination and creativity. Anything you can think of, build it, and we will gladly enjoy it. If you got a cool little trick, you want to rile the rest of us, just try converting an add-on, publish it. If you build it, we will come. How to publish. This is just a quick high-level thing. Basically, use npm publish. So you create your add-on, implement your functionality, commit to a public repo like GitHub, add some packaging. This is kind of done sort of automatically when you generate the add-on, some metadata about version and add-on name and so on, a couple keywords. Set the version, try to follow symver, and then use npm publish, and there's some documentation on how to follow that and get published out to the world. My name's Gordon Potter. I go by Eke Gordo, GitHub and Twitter. I'm open for any questions. Yes?
So how does dependencies, if add-ons have dependencies in other add-ons, for instance, you had your first examples like Ember moment, would it be more appropriate for your add-on to just add the moment in dollar or include the Ember seal and add-on?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if an add-on has a dependency or other external dependencies, say other add-ons, right? How do you do that, or what's the best pattern or approach for that? The way I've heard it is that, for example, people at Dockyard suggest don't try to style, if you got a component or something, don't try to style your add-on. Just do the functionality and then have it require depend on another add-on that sort of works on top of it and applies style. So say you want an add-on that's some administration control interface, and then you have a Twitter Bootstrap version versus a Foundation version or some other, you can include different dependencies and let them kind of overlay it. You can think of your add-on as existing all in the same, the code and the styles all kind of exist in the same world when everything gets merged in. So you just have this other dependency that you can include. And you can make sure in your package JSON, make sure that your add-on requires this other add-on. So when you npm install or Ember install, both will get pulled in and they're in your node modules or Bower folder. You can actually control Bower hooks to sort of say, when you install this, also do a Bower install of some other thing. So it's however you want to kind of organize it. And, I would think try to keep the add-ons fairly focused and what their purpose is, and then separate style from presentation. And not everything's obviously front-end focused. Some things are just commands or features. So you could include other npm modules that do give you things.
So when you include like an add-on that has a dependency on another add-on, will that add-on pull in that other dependency? Or do you have to explicitly state that? You
need to declare it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So if that add-on has a dependency, another add-on has a dependency, it will npm install its dependencies just like any other. So just npm packages. So.
Yeah.
So an add-on is essentially like the entire Ember project.
Yeah.
I just want like a single stateful button as a load. So I'm downloading an entire Ember.
No. It can be as minimal as just an index.js file. Think of it as like a lib. It's a folder and a little bit of convention, and like an add-on, if it's a component, for example, it can be just that component file in the template, and then a simple test that a dummy app. There's not. If you look at it, it's just structure. Like the app folder doesn't necessarily have to have anything in it. Maybe if it's a component, have the add-on version of the component, redeclare your component, and that gets merged in. But it's just convention. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of stuff in there. So if you look, a lot of add-ons really have very minimal in them. They just have kind of 2 or 3 files with 4, 5, 10 lines of code.
I'll touch on that a bit. It's basically all that stuff that you saw was support for the add-on, so you can develop the add-on. What actually gets merged in is like what's in the app folder, config, like a couple other things get merged in. So it brings in the whole package, but it only uses a very small portion.
So in your actual development code, stuff that would be synced out in your actual compiled code for production would be first designed.
Yeah.
So does everything live?
Just the components that would be made.
What's that?
Does everything just live in your knowledge?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's exactly.
If you look at, there's a whole, node modules, and even a particular module might have another node modules folder in it. They're recursively all the way down, depending how deep the depth
If
is.
you wanted to make this available to the world, it was just something, and you were going to use it in-house.
Talk about that.
Benefit would be to share it across projects then, so you can
Yeah, it doesn't have to
separate
be for the.
versioning and stuff.
Yeah, he's going to talk about in repo example, but to get it out to other projects that don't necessarily share the same repo, you kind of have to publish it somewhere. It doesn't have to be a public repo. It could be a private repo, but it is definitely that use case. I have this core functionality, and I got 15 projects that all want to make use of it, so I only have to maintain one little micro.
Private NPM registry.
Exactly. Yep. Totally doable.
Gordon,
Yeah.
is there consensus on the naming convention? I know there's some discussion on whether it's named ember-cli-.
Yeah, Jay Phelps, I think who now works at Netflix, tweeted about that, and that's all thrown me off too. I think the convention, as I kind of read the tea leaves, is Ember-CLI-my add-on name. If you're modifying the way Ember-CLI works, so it's like an npm or a node type functionality. Ember-my project, if it's sort of front-end Ember stuff as a component or a button or something, that seems to be what people are gelling around as those two things. Now, not everything follows that. Everyone just did Ember-CLI add-on, blah, 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 blah. And That's one of the things to look for. Did they change the name, or is it kept up to date? But I think that's the basic front end, kind of back end. ES6 and Ember, Node and NPM and back end code. Does that answer the question?
Yep. Could you expand on that post-process tree a little bit? I noticed there wasn't a pre-process tree.
That's your
maybe
code. But no, I don't know. Post-process tree is, as I understand it, is the ability to manipulate after everything's been done. So if say all the files have been generated and you want to fingerprint them or put a checksum or something in the file name, you get a chance to do that kind of work.
in your disk build.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Wherever it's at, yeah, your output target.
What would be the difference between like post-build and post-process tree?
This is, I don't know, you have an example that talks about
I gotta look at exactly where the hooks go. I don't have the answer to that right now.
build and process. Yeah, read the add-ons hook. That's a good question. It's a subtle distinction. I think processing, like taking SAS and converting it to some intermediary format, and then build, meaning Broccoli's done all its work, and you're ready to kind of work on the folder or the output.